All right, so by this point, we have a pretty good understanding about how the web works and how it came to be. So in this video, we get to actually jump in on that first language of the class, which is HTML, or Hypertext Markup Language. So we're going to talk about the structure and markup, talk about how to set up your development environment, and then you can actually start writing some code. So at this point, you'll want to read Duquette chapters 1 to 3 before continuing. These go over a lot of the tags that we're going to be talking about today and just gives some good background information that'll help this make more sense. So we're going to talk about website technology. So it's really important to understand how each of the web technologies fit together, and then we can do a deep dive into each of them. So I like to use this metaphor of building a house. And in order to make websites, you're going to have to learn three languages, two of which are covered in this class. So for our house example, you want to think if you want to build a house, you're going to need some kind of tools. You'll need, like hammers, whatever. And in the metaphor, this is our code editors, our web browsers, maybe a terminal, um, just basically everything that you need in order to do the development work. So after you have your tools, you'll need your building materials such as drywall, windows, doors, all of the raw materials that you would need to assemble in order to actually build a house. So in the metaphor, this is HTML. This is our hypertext markup language. You can technically build a website using just HTML, but it won't be functional or pretty. So this is where CSS comes in. CSS, or cascading style sheets, that's the second tooling, a language that we're going to learn in this class. So in the metaphor, in order to make the house beautiful, you'd need to style it. You'd come up with a number of rules to do so, such as if the room is a bathroom, it gets tiled flooring, or all the walls in the living room are painted green. This is CSS. So CSS is a style sheet language used to describe the presentation of the HTML. So in HTML, you might say this particular block of code or this content needs to be a paragraph. In CSS, you might have a rule that says all paragraphs have a font color of red. So it's a series of rules that describes how a piece of HTML should look if it matches a specified condition. So another example is if an image appears in the footer of a website, it must have a blue border, or all buttons have white text and an orange background. So at this point, we have a house built. It's functional. We've styled it. We have wallpaper and stuff. So now we might want to add in some behavior. So our house is structurally sound. We want to add some cool stuff to it, like maybe a thermostat that kicks on the heat when the temperature drops below 70 degrees. So this is like an added behavior to your house. Or maybe you want a coffee pot that turns on every day at 6 a.m. So these are behaviors that you can add to your house to enhance the living experience. In our metaphor, this is JavaScript. It adds a layer of behavior to your website. Maybe you want a banner to pop up on your website saying something along the lines of, "We store your cookies," with an accept button. Another common website element that you might see is a slideshow of images that automatically cycles through images, and this is done with JavaScript. So JavaScript is not in the scope of this class, but there is a follow-up JavaScript class. I'm not sure who's teaching it this year, if it's being offered, but if you really enjoy this class, definitely recommend going on to that one. All right, so your house, it's not isolated. It's going to interact with the outside world. So going back to our metaphor, you can think about outside requests as the backend system of your website. So think of the example. Let's say you want to order pizza from your new house. To do this, you'd pick up the phone or get on the internet, call your local pizza place. You'd give them your order and your credit card information, and then half an hour later, pizza will arrive at your door. The pizza place would be the backend server in this metaphor. So you make a request to it. Remember, we talked about making requests to a server. You make a request for the data and it returns a response. So when you log into Instagram, the website makes a request to an Instagram server somewhere asking for all of your data for your newsfeed or your feed. and it returns the contents like images, text, number of likes, etc. And many users can request data to the same backend, and it can handle many responses, just like many hungry people can call the same pizza place and have it delivered. So if that's a metaphor that helps you understand kind of how all these pieces work together, great. If not, just make sure that you understand the core technologies that involve um, making the website. A lot of you in the class are part of the professional writing concentration, so you will probably get, at some point, you'll probably use what's called a content management system, which is just software that allows the user to manage a website without actually having to write code for it for the most part. So some popular ones you may have heard of are WordPress, Drupal, Joomla. Wix is kind of similar to that. You can build out websites through drag and drop features. Here's a screenshot from one of my WordPress websites. But basically, you can, instead of just coding a new page, you could just click a new page button, type in some kind of text editor, and it would automatically generate a new web page for you. So if you are interested in learning more about how to do this on top of what we cover in this class, especially professional writing people, just let me know. Be happy to set up a demo and just explain how that works. In 2019, I'll have to check the latest statistics for this, but WordPress powered 35% of the entire web. So it's definitely one of the most popular ones, and you'll probably run into it if you stay in this career track. So just to recap, HTML is the structure. It contains the text, the images, and describes what makes up your website. CSS, the set of rules that describe how it should appear. JavaScript is an added behavior layer. We have the backend giving us our data, and CMS. All right, so moving on, what does HTML actually look like? So here is a very basic example of a web page. So you can see a lot of brackets, HTML, these are called tags, some content, and this is what we're going to actually learn how to write. You might recognize this image here from the book. This is what we call an HTML element. An HTML page, so a web page, is made up of a bunch of these little elements that describe what the content should look like. So most tags have, or most elements have an opening tag that says this is where the element starts, and they have a closing tag saying this is where the element ends, and then everything in the middle is the content. There are a few that don't have ending tags, and they're usually referred to as empty elements, and they just don't have any content in the middle. So this is what that would look like. You just have the opening tag and ending tag combined into one, and there's no there aren't like any sentences or anything inside there. Elements can have attributes with values. So this is an example of an image element. So this would actually display an image in your web page. It has a source, and this is the path to where that image lives. It has a width and a height, which just say how wide and how tall should the image appear. So this image here is an example of something that is displayed using an image tag. Elements can be nested. So this is a paragraph tag, so you're saying I am a paragraph, and then this word paragraph is surrounded by EM, and this is just another tag that you'll learn about called emphasis, but it would more than likely display as being italicized. We kind of use the family, I guess the hierarchy for when you're talking about nested tags. So this one would be the parent to this one. If this whole tag or this whole element was wrapped in something else, it could be the grandparent to the EM tag. This will make a lot more sense once you um, actually start writing it. So there are a number of tags that you will want to include in every HTML document that you write. One is this doc type. So I mentioned this, I think, in the previous video, but the doc type says everything in this file is HTML. Then you have an HTML tag that follows it, and then everything in between those two HTML tags is HTML code. You have a head element, which contains metadata about the page, and unlike the body tag, nothing in the head tag or element will display on the web page. And this is where you want to set stuff like your character set, like how should your browser read it? How should it understand the content on it? You have the title of your website. So the title is what actually displays up in this bar here. So this says this is the title tag of the page. Um, you can have a number of these tags, and we'll go over what a lot of these mean in upcoming classes. An important one that you'll use is the link tag, and this is how you attach some CSS, which remember is the language you use to style our web pages. That's how you tell your HTML to read the CSS and apply it to the page. Body element, everything between the body tags will display in your web page. You have a number of headings. A lot of this is in the book, so definitely make sure you go through that and you understand all of it there. Paragraph we went over. So HTML has had a couple different versions. We're on HTML5, and there are some old elements that are deprecated now. You don't want to be using them. When CSS was created, it was meant to separate the concerns of styling. So instead of having maybe a paragraph tag in HTML that you say you want it to be red, we don't want to use HTML to make it red, if that makes sense. We want to use CSS to do the styling. So there used to be some tags like this B tag, which when you used it, the content in between it would become bold. So this is a bold tag, but we don't want HTML to be making stuff bold. We want CSS to be making stuff bold. So these two have changed into strong tag and M. So by default, if you wrap some content in a strong tag, it will display bold, but it can be overwritten. So maybe you want all of your strong tags to be red or something like that. You can do that. So web browsers ignore whitespace. So this would still display without all this spacing here. It would probably just show one space. So don't use whitespace as a way to do space formatting in HTML. Two different ways to do lists. So what do you need to know to get started? Web pages are the rendering of coded text and script with other associated media types. And the three main components are the text content, the reference content, such as the images and everything, and then the markup, which is the HTML code that wraps the text content. So one thing that might be helpful is to look at the source code of existing websites. So if I just open up Dr. Fee's website, I'm going to right click, click View Page Source, and this is a way to see the HTML code of any website. So you can see a lot of the tags that we just went over. So you have your doc type, your language, or your HTML tag, and he has a language attribute set so that the page knows to render in English. This meta tag and title. Here is a link to his CSS, which I can open up. This is the CSS that he used to style his site. Let's go back and look at this. So he has this this navigation bar here, which you can see maps to this unordered list. He has a section, some information. The section contains information regarding my research. The section contains information regarding my research. So this is how he mocked up his page. So if you want to know what the website would look like without CSS, I can actually pop this into, this is called CodePen. It's a way to um, play around with code. Let me minimize that real quick and get rid of those two links to the style sheets. But this is what his website looks like without any CSS. So it's just basic, kind of looks almost like what a Word doc would render it as. The links probably won't work because I didn't copy over all those links, but yeah, so now you can see kind of why CSS is so important there. So when he loads in this code, which these are saying basically all the paragraphs look a certain way, all the strong tags look a certain way, that turns into this. So just a little example of how those two work together. Let's jump into file names. HTML document is just a text document, and you'd save it the same way that you might save a Notepad document. So there is a naming convention for the first page that loads when you hit a website. So if you think about this as your landing page, like if I go back to Dr. Fee again, samfee.net. This is his landing page. This is his index.html page. The web is case sensitive, so file names should be lowercase, don't include any special characters, and don't include spaces. So you might save it as if you had five different pages, like say you had index.html, say you had an about me page, you might call that one about.html and make sure they're lowercase. Like if you try to get to a page and you do capital ABOUT.html, it wouldn't load. So it is case sensitive. And finally, this is a concept that a lot of people get tripped up on, which is the idea of a URL being relative or absolute. So think about this as if you type an absolute URL into the web browser, or we'll even use this example here. If you type an absolute URL or you set that as your the link that you or the location of where you want your link to go to, it will go there without any additional information. So if I copy this and I put it up into here, in theory, yeah, see it loaded. That's an absolute URL. The URL gives you every bit of information that you need to get to that page. So a relative URL is relative to the page in which you're currently on, or your current location. So if I copy this, if I put /syllabus into the URL there, or into the browser, that's not going to load a page. That's not going to load our class's syllabus because there's nothing in front of it giving it context. So /syllabus, what is that relative to? Nothing at this point. But if I'm already on, let me go. If I'm already on this page, so a relative URL, I put it there. This is the relative URL. It's relative to where we're at. So I'm gonna do an example of that in code. Just hopefully that'll make a little more sense there. So if you're making what's called an anchor tag, which is just a link to somewhere, if you are linking to a page that is part of your website, common practice is to use a relative URL like this. If you're linking to an external page, like say I'm on my site linking to Dr. Fee's site, I would use an absolute URL. And you'll see some examples of that. So code formatting. Code formatting is really important. So if you look at this example here, and remember how I said elements should have a starting and ending tag. Here's a starting div tag. Where's the ending div tag? So you might say, okay, that's a p tag. This is some content. There's an ending p tag. Oh, here's a div tag. Oh, wait, but that's not an ending tag. So is the code wrong? Where's the ending tag? So you might keep going. Oh, here's a ending div tag. But does this ending div tag go with this starting div tag or this starting div tag? So you can see that you have to already start thinking about, I mean, is this which tag does this go with? Is this even correct code? So when you write it like this, it just makes it confusing. So say you decide to try to make it easier, so you want to put all of your tags on the same line. So now you have, this is the same code. So now you have a starting div tag, here's a paragraph, here's another div, and here's an ending div. So now you can start to see that these two might be inside of this starting and ending div tag. So you're getting a little bit of hierarchy, but it's still kind of difficult to know whether these are children of this one or if these are just next to the starting div tag. So this is the best way to do it here. So when you look at this, you can immediately tell that these two elements are children of these. So you can see that this is indented over or spaced over. This is how you want to write your code so that you can always you can always tell the hierarchy of where things start and end. So I'm going to go back to CodePen for a second. What I like to do is when I do my starting tag, I immediately do my ending tag. So you could, in theory, be like, okay, I want a div, and then I'll have, hey there, have a paragraph. Maybe we'll have another paragraph there, and then say this just keeps going, and then you're like, okay, I'm done. And the browser's displaying what you want it to, but you're missing your ending div tag there. So this can cause issues if like you decide to put a div under here. The browser might start to think that this div is an ending to this one, when in reality you should have a second ending div tag there. So what I like to do is when I start that, I immediately end it and then put my contact in here. One of the biggest problems that I see in homework and on tests is missing ending tags. So just please get in the habit of making the starting and ending one. So there, got the next one in there, and that's valid HTML code. For the development process, this is kind of an algorithm that you can follow for all of your projects and your homeworks. So step one is to create a workspace. For this, it usually makes sense to just create a folder that's going to hold all of the files for the project. So I'm going to make one for week one. So you can do this whatever way is easiest for you. I'm on a Mac, so I'm just going to go in here and do week one. All right, so now I have week one. I can open up whatever text editor I'm using. I'll use Sublime for now. So it'll should open up to a blank screen like this. Go up to File, Open. Well, it looks like I'm already loaded in week one, but find the folder that you just made and click Open. All right, so there's nothing in here yet. So let's see what we need to do next. Create an index.html document with a doc type. So do new file. In order to name a file in Sublime Code, you have to save it first. So I'm going to save. Make sure that you're saving it into the folder that you made and name it index.html. All right, so we got a file. Pop back over here. So we have to add a doc type. Remember what a doc type is? It says that uh, everything in this file is going to be HTML. So if you need to review that, just jump back to this page. If I can find the doc type here. So you have your doc type, HTML, you're saying what type of file it is, and then everything below it is going to go in the HTML code. All right, oh, I forgot my word HTML. Build out a head content with any kind of meta tags that you want, links to style sheets, scripts. So in order to build the head, you just make Sorry, I'm not used to using Sublime. Keeps ending them for me. So any kind of meta tags will go in here, or I'll just make one. Meta char set equals UT. Meta tags they don't have any content in them, they just have this attribute. So you don't have to end them that way. Below the head, you'll make the body. Everything in here will display in the browser. And that is technically a full HTML page. It's super boring, but here I will wrap that in a paragraph tag, and then I can go and remember it has the .html tag or extension, so when I double click on this, my computer will know to open it with the default web browser, which I think mine is set to Firefox right now. So there we go. That is the full web page. And then say I want to add an H1 heading in there. Jump back to here, refresh the page. Now I have an H1 heading. So these are the default styling that my browser is going to apply. So eventually we'll change these with CSS. All right, and then yeah, I put a few of these in here, and then you view it in the browser. So that's the basic way, that's the basic process for creating a web page. So you have a number of exercises for the week, and I just want you to try to work through them. They'll be graded on best effort. So did you complete them? Did you show that you attempted to understand the information? And if you didn't, did you ask questions and get clarification? So kind of be a participation exercise combo there. So I just want you to follow through all of these, try to get as far as you can, and if you get stuck, ask questions. Um, you'll be marking up a recipe here, so you'll get some experience making new projects with lists, and then a little bit of writing down here. So if you get stuck on anything, again, just post a message in the team site and I'll get to it as soon as I see it. Good luck.